Hello everyone, I am Manavendra Saha, faculty member of ABES Engineering College under the Department of Mechanical Engineering. Today I want to discuss one important topic on material science that is called the heat treatment process. Heat treatment process is one of the most important process in the material science for making such kind of properties which is very much important into the material. For recovery this such kind of properties, the heat treatment process is reason behind it. So let's start my lecture. The content which I will cover under the heat treatment process, the following are annealing process, normalizing, hardening, continuous cooling curve, and interpretation of final microstructure properties. After that, we will also cover some special type of heat treatment process like ostempering, mud tempering, case hardening, carbonizing, nitriding, cyanitriding, carbonitriding, and beside the syllabus, there are newly introduced some type of hardening process. This is called the flame hardening, induction hardening, vacuum, and plasma hardening. So, at first, what is the definition of heat treatment process? It is very much important. Basically, heat treatment process is a process in which the metal is to be heated at a certain temperature. After that, the metal is to be stay or soaking at that temperature. It's at a prolonged time. Obviously, after heating the metal into some time, this is to be cooled down for up to the room temperature. The such kind of process is called the heat treatment process. So first of all, metal is to be heated at a certain temperature. Metal is to be stay at a particular time. And lastly, it is to be cooling into the different medium. The time is to be soaking. It is depend on the material structure like cross-sectional area of the metal. And the medium is depending on the types of heat treatment process. So basically, there are three types of heat treatment process. Number one is annealing, number two is normalizing, number three is hardening. The same type of process is applying on the three types of heat treatment process, but depending on the cooling system, it is to be different name. First of all, in the annealing process, when the metal is to be heated at a temperature, and after that, if it is cooled into the furnace, it is called the annealing process. Similar type of normalizing process, the metal is to be heated at a temperature and it is to be soaking at a different time. After that, if it is cooled down into the air or ash, it is called the normalizing. And lastly, the metal is to be heated at a temperature and the metal is to be cooled down, directly quenching into the water or oil. So suddenly the temperature is dropping into the normal atmosphere temperature. It is called the hardening process. Most of the time here we are discussing about the heat treatment for a steel, because steel is one of the best example through which heat treatment can be easily understood. And depending on the carbon percentage, the steel have divided into two types. Number one is eutectoid steel. It is called the hypo-eutectoid steel, and second number is the hyper-eutectoid steel. The two type of steel are available in the market, and depending on the availability, it is to be heated at a temperature. So obviously, we can say that the hypo or hyper-eutectoid steel are to be heated, and after that, it is to be cooling down. If the carbon percentage is below 0.83 percentage, it is called the hypoeutectoid steel. And if it is above the 80.83 percentage to the 2%, it is called the hypereutectoid steel. This is the very interesting diagram through which we can easily see understand the heat treatment process. It is basically the iron carbon diagram. An iron carbon diagram, there are in this figure we can easily examine that this is the 700 degrees centigrade. Just above it is called the AC1 temperature. It is near out 723 degrees centigrade. It is sometimes called as a recrystallization temperature. If the metal is to be heated above the recrystallization temperature, it is apply for the heat treatment. And obviously it is very true that the metal is to be heated at least AC3 temperature. AC3 temperature means near about 800 to 900 degrees centigrade. It is the AC3 temperature. So all of the metal, especially for steel, is to be heated above the recrystallization temperature up to AC3 temperature, and after that it is to be cooled down. Depending on the medium, the heat treatment process will be going on. First of all, the first one is to be discussed later. Number one is the annealing process. Annealing is a very important process because it is the first one heat treatment process in which the metal is to be heated at a certain temperature and it is to be cooled down into the furnace. So obviously the furnace, the temperature is not dropping suddenly. It is time taking and very slow cooling is to be there. So obviously, if anywhere the very slow cooling is there, the grain deformation also to be very slow. A stable formation is to be comes out at a certain time, and a huge time is to be taken for the ambient temperature. And obviously a good structure for making the metal to the soften property, it is applying for the annealing process. In this figure, we can easily see that the temperature is near about 800 plus degrees centigrade, and after that soaking time is also there, and after that it is to be dropped down at a room temperature. So obviously annealing is applied onto it, and it is that apply for the furnace cooling process. This is the types of annealing process. There are normally 4 types of annealing process are available in the market. This is number one is full annealing, number two is stress relief annealing, number three is recrystallization annealing or process annealing, and last one is the spheroidizing. So I will discuss one by one. Number one is the full annealing. Full annealing is very much important for the annealing process. When the metal is important for it is to be required to soften the material, because sometimes when the metal is to be being used, it is not just easily you can deform or easily you can changes the plastic property of the material. So obviously some material soften property is to be introduced into the material. The full annealing process is to be again happen. So in this process, the metal is to be heated above the AC3 plus 50 degrees centigrade. It means normal heat treatment process is same type of heat treatment process is to be going there, but it is to be very slowly into the furnace cooling, and after that the metal is to be converted into the structure. So by structure, you will be very surprised that in this figure the carbon is just converted and perlite is to be converted as a spheroidized formation or circular formation, but it is surrounded by the cementite, and cementite as surrounded by the cementite is surrounded under the perlite. So by definition our aim is that in the full annealing the metal is to be taken softened, but cementite is create a boundary, and obviously the 100% softness property is not getting from the full annealing process. So there are some brittleness property may be introduced into the full annealing process due to the surrounding by the cementite. Otherwise full annealing process is very long time process and very slow cooling process. Next one is the spheroidizing process. Very important process of the spheroidizing. It is just of easily you can understand full annealing is above the recrystallization temperature, and in the spheroidizing it is the below the recrystallization temperature. Spheroidizing is applying on this material where the metal is not good for the machinability property, and some types of poor machinability property are there. So obviously the structure of the carbon or grains are in needle like structure. So obviously any types of machines tool are impinge onto this material, to maybe crack is propagate or very improper machinability is happening. So just removing the such kind of obstruction into the materials, periodizing process is to be happen. So in this periodizing process, firstly the metal is not to be heated above the requisition temperature. It means below the requisition temperature. Obviously 723 degrees centigrade is the requisition temperature for steel. So below the requisition temperature, that is 600 degrees centigrade near about, it is to be heated. So obviously it is to be heated at a this type of temperature, and it is very slow cooling. So time is taken near about 24 hours, and after that metal is just uh, taking a shape of a spherical shape. So spherical shape means that the needle-like structure is converted into the spherical shape. So obviously, the good thing is that when the tool is impinged onto it, due to the spherical shape, it is very easily to machining the material. So spheroidizing process indicate that the metal grain structure is to be converted into the spherical form. Next is the process annealing process. Process annealing, it is very important. It is also the recrystallization annealing process. Process annealing is applies on this type of material, which is comes out from the rolling, forging, that type of material. Basically, what happened is that up into the rolling process, when the product is comes out, the some type of strain hardening, due to the strain hardening or due to the grain formation, the again plastic deformation is to be applying for getting the more accuracy on the material. So into the rolling process, if it is happening continuously, so a crack is to be maybe propagate. So for removing the such kind of activity, the process annealing is applied intermediate between the process. If it are taking the rolling process for an example, so when the rolling process is going on, after that suddenly the metal is picked up and it is to be heated at a temperature near about 600 to 700 degrees centigrade, and obviously it is to be slow cooling, so the grain is again elongated and a deformation is occurring by the rolling process. So the rolling process is applied on the material for making the grains as an elongated, and the annealing process is applying for the material for the softness property. So obviously two simultaneously continuous process is applying onto it, so get the uh, structure very precisely and reduce the distortion of the material. So process annealing is applied on the same this type of uh, activities. This is called the process annealing, and it is applying for the applying of the for the recovery of the grain growth. Last one is the stress relief annealing. Stress relief annealing is one of the important type of annealing process when machining some component or grinding some component. The stress relief and stress relief is very much important, because when casting process, quenching, machining or welding process, due to the continuous cooling or due to the inadequate amount of the cooling process or improper cooling process, the metal is not deformed precisely. So obviously non-uniform cooling is reason behind it, and due to that the um, metal is very much less grain growth or the softness property is not happening. So stress is to be removed from the material. So for targeting the stress relief annealing, the metal is to be heated just below the recrystallization temperature and not changing their phase anyhow. And after a very small time is taking for the reduce of the removing the stress from the material. And obviously the such kind of activity is going on for the stress relief annealing. After stress relief, when the stress is to be reduced from the metal, so obviously the metal which are comes out from grinding or the machining process, they are easily applying for the production. So lastly, we can conclude that the heat treatment process are basically for three types. Number one is the annealing process. Number two is uh, normalizing process. Number three is hardening process. The three type of heat treatment process is just differ for their cooling system. If it is cooled into the furnace, it is called the annealing. It is cooled into the air, it is called the normalizing. It is cooled into the water or oil, it is called the hardening process. Obviously, further classification of the annealing process are divided into four types. Number one is full annealing, number two is spheroidizing, number three is stress relief, and number four is a process annealing. And every type of annealing process have their own behavior, have their own target, and after that all type of annealing process is going on. So I think this is the end of my first lecture. Mm, these reference I have preferred for taking the information very uh, accuracy. So thank you.